Hi, I'm Rob, and this is a audio recording of Environmental Soup, and it is about homelessness and the environment. Hello, you're listening to Environmental Soup through the facilities of Trent Radio, 92.7 CFFFM, which is broadcast in Northern Ontario, and I am recording this in Cataraqui, Kingston, Ontario. Recently, an organization called the Kingston Climate Justice Coalition, which is made up of several organizations such as 350 Kingston, 50 by 2030 Kingston, Just Futures Kingston, Opal Kingston, to name a few of the organizations. They gave an F in a 2024 City of Kingston Climate Report called in the category Vulnerable People. The report card says, City Council has aggressively displaced people who are unhoused from public areas. They have also stalled action on a proposed adequate temperature bylaw to protect tenants from extreme heat. And they say that they should cease displacement of people without houses, and to pass an adequate temperature bylaw for all rental units. So, on today's episode of Environmental Soup, I will connect the housing crisis and homelessness to environmental issues. I have learned that the Ontario Big City Mayors are voting on a motion that would ask the provincial and federal government to allow municipalities to clear encampments and also to impose involuntary treatment for addictions. It is unfair to connect addiction and homelessness because they're all unhoused people that do not have addictions, and they're all housed people that do have addictions. I just wanted to come back in because the big city mayor did pass a motion that has some differences from what I ended up talking about. I believe that it is still problematic, and I will make a video about the motion that did pass. I have made a video on my YouTube channel, Environmental Soup, specifically about involuntary treatment. The same motion does talk about the same motion talks about clearing encampments. The impact of clearing encampments is that people will go to increasingly contaminated sites, such as rail lines, landfills, etc. There is an article intersecting hazard intersectional identities, a baseline critical environmental justice analysis of U.S. homelessness by Aaron Goodling. This article talks about how people stayed put, people who are unhoused stayed put in contaminated areas even though they knew about the contamination. There was an example from the city of Portland where people erected tents, but they had no other place to go, even after an environmental assessment from 2014 said that there was contamination in the area. The article says that people are evicted in the name of protecting green space, but then later evicted in the name of contamination. This is what happened in Catawalkway, Kingston. And there was a court case as well. The encampment is on a historic landfill. But in that encampment, there was a successful argument that they could stay, and the courts accepted that at least during the night. There was problems with the daytime evictions. There was ethical issues around that as well. But at nighttime, they could the city couldn't evict them. Anyways, I'll get into that court case in another court case as well later on in this episode. The article talks about how constant criminalization leads to people going into dangerous circumstances. And I should also say that this is a US-based article, but there was implications to the Canadian experience. There was a quote, "People that are camped along railroads, they're at a particular risk because the trains use asbestos and arsenics in the brakes. And these chemicals have contaminated the soil." And then another quote, "For folks under the freeway and stuff, brackets, air pollution has been a concern, but it's less of a concern than the streets. It's safer for people there, brackets, under the freeways, than in more heavily policed areas, even though conditions are horrible." There's research on this issue of environmental injustice and how it impacts unhoused people. In addition to this, there is a risk of losing life. And I'll talk about that when I get to the court cases. And it's not just one municipality, it's multiple. I encourage listeners to write to Ontario big city mayors or your municipality to urge them to stop clearing encampments. Because clearing encampments is not helpful, and unhoused people will still be unhoused. There's also studies around the social determinants of health, housing, access to housing, safer food, no displacement, all have factors into people's health. And if people continue to be displaced, those negative health impacts associated with environmental pollution. And then there's also the Climate Justice Coalition also talked about a heating bylaw. So I'll talk about that as well. Climate change has impacts on unhoused people, from extreme weather, like in hurricanes, to extreme heat. And extreme heat has caused deaths. And it's not just the unhoused that are impacted. There was a study in British Columbia which showed that low-income individuals were at greater risk of dying from extreme heat. This is why there's advocacy around a heat bylaw. There's an article, a PDF called Recommendations for Municipalities Focus Extreme Heat and Rental Housing in Hamilton. The PDF, I should say who it's by. It's prepared by Advocacy Centre for Tenants Ontario, the Canadian Environmental Law Association, Low Income Energy Network, and Hamilton Community Legal Clinic. And this is from April 4th, 2023. The article says that some of the health impacts include dehydration, cramps, heat exhaustion, and heat strokes at approximately 36.6 degrees Celsius. And they listed deaths in Quebec in 2018, after the hottest summer on record, and there was 86 deaths. In British Columbia, in 2021, there was 619 heat-related deaths. The PDF says, deaths were higher among those living in socially or materially deprived neighborhoods. Poor quality housing, homelessness, and overall deprivation were identified as risk factors for the increased mortality rate. And then, it says 98% of heat-related deaths occurred indoors in British Columbia. And then many of the homes did not have adequate cooling systems. And the city of Kingston failed to implement a maximum heat bylaw or a temperature bylaw in rental units. And that is one of the reasons why they got an F on the category of vulnerable people. There was some other categories as well. There was 7 categories. Vulnerable people is one of them. I'm now going to look at the court cases. One is called the Regional Municipality of Waterloo versus Persons Unknown and to be ascertained. The respondents, unhoused people, said that there was a breach of the Section 7 rights, the right to life, liberty, and security of person, and Section 15(1) rights, equality rights, under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This is a case where unhoused people, the city was trying to clear unhoused people from an encampment. And they were challenging, and unhoused people were challenging the bylaw that banned encampments. As of 2018, every municipality is supposed to do a point-in-time counts for people experiencing homelessness. So there should be data indicating the available shelter space and how much is needed. Some of the I won't name the individuals in this podcast, but they all in the cult. So one individual said that she has found that lining up for shelter was stressful, and there was no guarantee of claiming a bed. And this individual did not have a watch, and could be denied shelter space. Another individual was assaulted and robbed, and has a partner, but if this individual left, she would be, the bed would possibly be given away. When she was in a shelter system. In this case, there was risk of the encampment included rat droppings, human feces, consumption of alcohol and drugs, presence of barbecues, propane tanks, fire hazard, physical altercations, repeat trespass. However, the justice pointed out that if these people are displaced, or if there's no adequate housing, closing the encampment or clearing it would move the risk somewhere else. And I will point out that consumption of alcohol and drugs is not a risk. It could happen in housed environments. And the issue is the drug poisoning. Access to washrooms should be available more easily to people that are unhoused. There was testimony about the risk associated with homelessness, forced transience, forced displacement, including eviction from encampments, interrupts ability for healthcare teams to complete diagnostic and treatment plans. So that's one testimony. Other healthcare problems created by encampment evictions include the inability to locate patients once they have been forced to leave, can lead to their discharge from programs which require regular attendance. Acute conditions such as frostbite exposure and heat stroke due to the loss of tents, clothing, and medication. The exacerbation of such mental health conditions as depression, anxiety, PTSD, and panic disorders. And increased substance use and fatal overdoses. So those are the risk factors of being forcibly displaced. And she says, the Dr. Solida says encampments decreased displacement, which increases the chance to find outreach services, street outreach, food, clothing, medication, and harm reduction supplies. They decrease isolation and risk of fatality. And this reduces violence, overdoses, and loss of connection to medical services. There's a sense of community, increased chance of being helped during an overdose. Encampments minimize sleep deprivation, and encampments provide physical and mental rest. So those are improved environmental factors if there is an encampment. Ideally, there would be housing with services unique to everyone, everyone's needs met in housing, but that has not been what has happened in many municipalities. So I will look for the conclusions of this court case. So based on the findings, the justice declared the bylaw in violation of Section 7 of the Charter, in that it, and this is a quote, in that it deprives the homeless residents of encampment life, liberty, and security of the person in a manner not in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice and is not saved by Section 1 of the Charter. The decision was if the bylaw is inoperative if it prevents residents of an encampment from living on and erecting temporary shelters without a permit on a property when the number of homeless persons exceed the number of available shelter beds in the region. So it was not the best outcome, but if there's evidence that there's a lack of shelter spaces, then it is a violation of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. There is a similar case, the Corporation of the City of Kingston versus Doe 2023. The City of Kingston tried to clear an encampment. Paragraph 18 says that the city has conceded that it has not been able to locate adequate shelter space for each unhoused individual residing in the municipality. And then many shelters do not have availability during the day. And going from place to place is tiring. That is one of the testimonies. I'll look at the decision in this case because it is several pages long. So the justice concluded that there is a breach of Section 7 in the City of Kingston bylaw. The justice said that in paragraph 134, an additional exception will be read in to clarify that the prohibition on camping does not apply to the erecting of temporary shelter in parks by homeless persons commencing 1 hour before sunset and ending 1 hour after sunrise. This court decision did not address daytime encampments, which is problematic. Then there was the individuals, the unhoused people in the encampment were displaced after a housed individual attacked residents of the encampment, and it's important to note that the attacker was housed, and the city has violated this court case and has caused great harm to people that are unhoused. This episode demonstrates the connection between the environment and unhoused populations. And I hope that this encourages you to defend the rights of unhoused people. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of your week.